What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Looks like somebody is not learning from his mistakes. Putin just announced another 3-day ceasefire for May 8th to May 10th for Victory Day celebrations in Russia. And by the way, traditionally I will be doing a live stream of a Victory Day parade in Moscow on Red Square, so please subscribe if you don't want to miss it. Awesome opportunity to chat and ask me questions directly in real time. But so yeah, this Victory Day ceasefire proposal is a curious blend of solemn remembrance and theatrical bravado. We honor our ancestors by posing our own assault, Putin proclaims. But does the world actually really need another reminder that Russia can stop shooting for exactly 72 hours just because it just feels like it? People have not yet forgotten Putin's previous 30 hours peace proposal, which turned out to be a complete fiasco for Putin's reputational image, not only outside of Russia, but within the minds of the propagandists and Z-patriots as well. They simply did not know how to react and what to say. The confusion was visible. And yet, he does it again. What is he even thinking? Because just like last time, Ukrainians said, very well, if you can stop shooting so easy without any conditions, why not extend the peace for 30 days and, well, potentially even beyond? And since Putin never wants to publicly humiliate himself, again, he got his mouthpiece Peskov to say for him that Russia does not accept Ukrainian proposal. At this point, it feels like a broken record. You would think Putin learned his lesson from the last time, but surprise, he did not. Not too many people believe whatever comes out of Putin's mouth. Is his goal to make absolutely no one believe him then? I really don't get it. At least one thing to acknowledge is that during these 3 days of peace, thousands of people from both sides will get to keep their lives. Well, so that's at least something. So today, let's dig past the Victory Day gloss and expose the raw reality of this humanitarian gesture. Because when the celebration ends on May 10th, the echoes of silence will be equally deafening as the renewed artillery attacks. When Vladimir Putin ordered the guns to fall silent on humanitarian grounds, it sounded as generous as a minefield wrapped in a Christmas wrapping paper. The Kremlin's official statement, carefully timed to hit midnight on May 8th specifically, read like a press release for a blockbuster film. Dramatic, self-congratulatory, and riddled with disclaimers. The peace is to happen, they said. We are excited to announce that we want to stop fighting. We expect Ukraine to follow the suit or else. It warned, promising an adequate and efficient response to any breach from Ukrainian side. From Ukrainian side, Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha couldn't hide his contempt. Why tie life and death to Victory Parade date? If Russia truly wants peace, it must cease fire immediately, without waiting for an anniversary, he replied, and it makes sense, right? Sounds familiar also. Looks like this is the same thing what Putin was doing with nuclear threats, until everyone literally stopped believing him. In response, Andriy Sybiha offered a literal olive branch. 30 continuous days of truce. No strings, no stagecraft, no preconditions. Just plain and simple peace. Everyone stops shooting, and I mean, it does not get more simple than that, right? It was a proposal anchored in reality. Time for families to bury the dead and hospitals to catch their breath. Yet Putin smirked at the idea, unwilling to concede more than a brief intermission. He obviously had to deliver his response through other people, though. Meanwhile, back in Washington, the President Donald Trump declared that the ceasefire talks are getting close, yet publicly questioned Putin's sincerity. Finally. All while Russia's cruise and ballistic missiles continued to fly across Ukrainian skies. The spectacle of Trump's in-and-out policy and diplomacy, one moment brokering a deal and the next questioning its worth, mirrors Moscow's own two-step strategy of gesture first, followed by a threat. It is like watching a puppet show where every string is held by the very same puppeteer. Now, what other countries, such as the US, France, Germany, and pretty much most of the European Union have to say about all this? Well, let's talk about all this right now. If you peel away the hopes over potential peace, what remains is a grand tug of war over the headlines. No real peace is being discussed, at least for now. Both countries, specifically Russia, wants to bring as much war on their side as possible, trying to make it look like that they are the ones to make the very first step towards a long-awaited end of this war. European diplomats, in the meantime, accuse the Kremlin of dragging its feet in negotiations to let its larger, battle-hardened forces seize even more still Ukrainian ground. On one side, you have Sergei Lavrov on the phone with Senator Marco Rubio, discussing prerequisites for dialogue, as though they're just negotiating some kind of a house decor.
I spoke to him very directly. I said we had a meeting today with the Ukrainians. We proposed an outline. We didn't go into specificity about it, but I think he has an understanding of some of the elements of it. I'm sure he does. I said we thought it was constructive. We thought it was positive. Nobody rejected anything. Nobody got up from the table and walked away.
On the other, Ukrainian soldiers inch along muddy trenches, listening for the slightest sounds of incoming shells. So which reality does Russia even expect us to believe in then? The United States proposed a 30-day ceasefire with no caveats. An offer Ukraine embraced immediately, but Russia, as expected, dismissed with a huge list of demands. Halt Western arms, suspend Ukraine's mobilization, and then maybe, just maybe, we will talk. Maybe. Kremlin's spokesperson Dmitry Peskov brushed off Ukraine's request to extend the 3-day pause as manipulation, as if the very word could rewrite the Russian playbook of bait-and-switch diplomacy. In Brussels, France's Emmanuel Macron and Germany's Olaf Scholz quietly urged unity. A real ceasefire is the only path to durable peace. The French Foreign Ministry hinted that continued stalling would isolate Russia further from the continent it once claimed as its sphere of influence. And yet, back home, Russian state media already ran segments celebrating the triumph of our arms, even as generals debated whether 3 days of calm was worth more than the spoils of war. The propaganda blitz extended online too. Telegram channels loyal to the Kremlin streamed live feeds of rehearsals for the Victory Day parade. Rows of booths, columns of tanks, flags waving in the air, and meanwhile, independent Russian bloggers risked arrest to broadcast Ukrainian news subtitled in Russian, showing collapsed apartment buildings and school children hiding under the desks. Information is, as you can see, is another frontline, and Russia has fortified it with censorship, fines, and jail sentences for anyone daring to call this conflict a war rather than a special military operation. Yet another big part of these peace talks, proposals, and temporary ceasefire deals is the status of Crimea. Some people might have forgotten about it since it's not that much activity is happening on the peninsula right now, well, but it is still there. So, let's see what both sides have to say about this notorious piece of land. If 3 days of silence are cynical, then the Trump administration's rumored demand to permanently recognize Crimea as Russian territory, it's downright outrageous. Picture negotiating peace only to hand Putin a trophy he stole with tanks back in 2014. That annexation violated international law, triggered UN resolutions, and unleashed sanctions that are still fanned in Sevastopol's port. Yet, here we are, debating whether to include it into a ceasefire treaty. In Kiev, lawmakers erupted. Alexander Mereshko, a member of Zelensky's party, called the idea treasonous, noting that Ukraine's constitution forbids ceding territory without a nationwide referendum. And even then, it would shatter the nation's soul. Thousands of Ukrainians died protecting this land. Was it all for nothing? Crimean Tatars, who faced deportation under Stalin, are now facing repression under Moscow, and obviously they issued very stark warnings that recognizing Russian rule would erase their hopes of return. International law scholars then chipped in, citing the UN General Assembly vote that declared Russia's annexation invalid and the International Court of Justice hearings on the Crimean Peninsula. None of them gave green light to a legal path for permanent surrender. Yet powerful hawks in Washington and Brussels murmured that any deal must include impossible concessions to win Putin's approval. Well, is that genuine peacemaking or a hostage-taking of principle? What we cannot forget is that if you once surrender to a bully, he will never stop and even intensify his attacks against you. Crimean example proved this truth 100%, with Putin invading the entire Ukraine just 8 years later. I mean, he faced no consequences for doing this, so he thought, why not? However, Ukrainian public opinion polls reflect the agony of compromise. Many accept temporary land concessions to end the slaughter, but permanent recognition of Crimea, well, that definitely crosses the red line. Even Kiev's mayor Vitaly Klitschko spoke of only temporary arrangements to free prisoners or move civilians to safety. Because hope, however faint it feels, must not be forever extinguished. After the fiery hopes of Ukraine's 2023 summer counteroffensive, the war settled into grim trench warfare routine, which unfortunately lasts until now, with the only exception being obviously Kursk incursion back in August 2024. The president's office quietly recalibrated. Instead of grand offensives, the focus shifted to improving defenses. Air defense batteries, smart artillery, and foreign training missions. In exchange for holding any ground, Ukraine insists on security guarantees, NATO accession, formal defense pacts, or even NATO soldiers' boots on the ground. Putin, as always, snorts at the idea of Western troops, but trembles, nevertheless, at the thought of encirclement or Kursk 2.0. On the ground, soldiers like Alexander from Donetsk zone trade bullets for conversations about international diplomacy. He remembers sergeants joking about ceasefires that last long enough to just, literally refill water bottles before the rockets resume once again. He counts comrades lost to snipers even during declared pauses. We will not stop fighting until all Ukrainian land is free, he says. Yet each day, the frontline activities challenge the very meaning of ceasefire in body counts. Behind the trenches, civilian volunteers organize soup kitchens in Kiev's subway stations, doctors battle PTSD in makeshift clinics, and social media outlets scramble to verify every alleged violation, from stray tank threats crushing wheat fields in Kherson to sabotage of humanitarian aid convoys bound for Mariupol. When stomachs growl and bullets fall silent, the real question becomes, who cares more about human life? The generals on both sides, or the paramedics clutching to the first aid kits. This 3-day ceasefire can become something bigger, if played right. Putin already revealed his cards and showed that he is bluffing whenever he refused to extend peace to 30 days the very first time. Even his beloved propagandists found it extremely difficult to find the right words and support the decision of their supreme leader. And once the story was in the past, well, they exhaled with relief, thinking, whew, I hope this never happens again. Well, but here we are. Less than 2 weeks later, Putin again proposes temporary peace, knowing this time that Ukrainians will counter his offer with 10 times longer ceasefire. And as expected, Putin was not able to respond again. Ukrainians already read Putin like an open book. Some people in the West start understanding the mindset of Putin as well. But the main question is whether the people of Russia will see it too. We hope they will. Because his bluffs and broken promises are always there for anyone to witness. And as long as propaganda will no longer be able to clean up Putin's mess, this is when the things might finally start to change. Well, there you have it, guys. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you wish to support my work, there are links down below. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe in ridiculous Russian propaganda.